Hello and welcome to the Brazilian BA Guests channel on YouTube and on LinkedIn. I have been speaking with different guests, thought leaders from around the world about innovation, about business, about how to be nimble. And today I have a different format with 4 different guests talking about business innovation. First one is a researcher and author of 17 books in management, also part of the development of the ISO innovation standard. Dr. Annika Steiber, thank you for coming again in my channel, Annika.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. I have also with Annika 2 of the developers of the 4C model for entrepreneurial capital, Mr. Albert Bankston and Brigitte Stern. Thank you for coming. I'm not sure I pronounced your name correctly, Brigitte.
Birgitte.
Birgitte.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming. And the last guest today is an author or a co-author of the book Principles of Entrepreneurial Capital, where this 4C model for entrepreneurial capital was presented, Mr. Roland Williams. Thank you for coming, Roland.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you all here. I would like to give you some short time, at least, to introduce yourself. Talk a little bit about who you are and why do you believe this panel is important for our audience. Could you start for us, Roland?
Sure. I'm basically have worked with IT and communications for a long time. Companies like Coca-Cola and agencies here in Sweden. But basically, this is so important because it adds context. This is all about context for business leaders and to help business leaders to understand what happens in complexity and how they can basically make their infrastructure and their organizations anti-fragile. And we'll get into that. So it's good to be here.
Thank you very much. You already got me. Anti-fragile in complexity. That's great. So, Birgit, could you follow the lead?
Well, my background is that I was working as a leader for 15 years. And during that time, I drove a lot of innovation projects. Afterwards, I understood most of them were transformative. But at the time, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about entrepreneurship. When I found out, it was just 15 years ago, I found out about entrepreneurship, and I understood that I was an entrepreneur myself. Since then, I've been studying the subject and the research on it, and I've been talking to many entrepreneurs over the time. And there is so many interesting aspects on entrepreneurship, both similarities and differences compared to entrepreneurship. So that's why I think much more information must be spread about it.
Perfect. And that's the theme for this conversation today, entrepreneurial capital. I want to hear more about that, and I'm glad that you already mentioned it. So following the lead, Albert, can you introduce yourself and why is this important that you and we
Of course. Well, my passion for this started 25 years ago. I was studying at the university, and I really understood what the internet's going to do for humanity, and especially the way that how we conduct our work. When I grew up, my mother had to work half an hour as a nurse just for me to pay 1 minute to call my father in Venezuela from Sweden. Understanding this is for free now, and the new generation doesn't even think about it. It's such a mind-boggling idea. So I thought, if I hurry up really fast right now, 25 years ago, and start my companies, and I really drive this, I might be there surfing the edge of this. And then I started to go out there and talk to the companies, the large incumbent companies that had so much to gain on this. And they were so lousy. They were so bad at implementing this and really not understanding the whole vision behind what the internet's going to do. So it became my passion, my North Star, and I've been working with it ever since.
Perfect. So, and you bring this relationship between technology and innovation, how technology drives innovation, how innovation drives technology. That's very interesting. And so, to close this first block of presentations, Annika, would you present yourself, please? Tell
Yeah,
us, why is this conversation important?
absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, I've been focusing on this for 30 plus years now. The intersection, specifically the intersection between technology and management. And nobody really talks about this, but management has evolved dramatically over the last 30 years. We heard before about innovation. We focused the early days, on how to become more innovative. I just found that it's not really about becoming more innovative per se. It's to understand that we need to lead companies in a very, very different way, and continuous innovation is a need. It's a must. It's you just have to produce that. So the question is more relevant, to ask, how do you actually manage? How do you lead a company for that? And I describe my findings of this new mindset and practices in 17 books, as you mentioned. And today I act as a professor and senior advisor to large firms that have decided, that really decided to change. I don't want to spend my time on companies that don't, that don't decide to change. Waste of time.
Perfect. I know, Annika, that you have written a lot of books. These are some of the books that are available on Amazon. And you have studied those companies who are really making the difference. And I would like to ask a question for you, so we could start this conversation a little deeper, is based on these researches that you have made, what are the success factors of the global leaders in innovation and in management, as you said? And another question following this one, if you could, if these styles of management are different from different places. I know I have studied US, Europe, and China. So what makes the difference, and does this difference is different from different places?
Okay, so let us start with some key observations, and I will focus on four major differences in four fields: mindset, leadership, organization, and people. But to just set a statement at the top of this is that they are like 180-degree different. It's not even the same animal. You cannot, if you take the typical traditional way of thinking about how to organize a firm from, say, a certain part of Europe, and then you bring that to Silicon Valley, it's 180-degree different. How they think about people, how they think about leadership, and definitely about the mindset, which is also very different. So to become more concrete, I would say that mindset, those leaders that I've been looking at, the Googles, the Alibaba, the Teslas, all those companies, the Amazons, they all are having a number of things in common. One is that they all want to be number one in the world. I mean, to be a follower is not an option. They are to be the number one in the world, and they're going to stay being the number one in the world. There's not a question that Google is not going to stay being the leader by now taking leadership in AI, for example, and sort of become a follower in AI. I mean, that is not even it's like a joke if you would do that. The second thing is that they have this mindset that is very future and growth oriented. Profitability for them is more like an hygiene factor. The real question is, how do you, with that profitability that they have to show up, to analysts and others, how do you grow double-digit, numbers every year and continue to do that decade after decade after decade? So that is a very different mindset. They are extremely future growth oriented. And then they are very early adopters of technologies, and they use digital technologies as enablers you can say they are like in a constant digital transformation. They are the first adopting mobile. They are the first adopting AI. They need to be that because they know that if they use the technology, they can be faster, they can be better, they can be more innovative, they can create more fun workplaces and attract the best talents, and they can be much, much more scalable. And thereby they can be the winner of the world. So that is mindset. Leadership. I would describe their leaders as the best athletic coaches. They are like the best coaches in sports. Their task is to be visionary and set a direction, to know the area they are in, right? Really well, to be ordered to support their team, but then also to build high-performing teams. So the most important thing is to build a high-performing team and try to figure out how to use each talent in the best way and to create this high-performing team when they collaborate together. And they enable the team to make an impact, which is also a big thing. Regarding organization, I would describe their organization as flat. It's networked. It's a lot of horizontal communication, thanks to digital communication. In some cases, they also believe in, or I say in most cases, they also believe in small units. So in some cases, they have been breaking down their whole organization into a lot of different businesses, which also in one way is the networked organization. They are decentralized. They are open to ecosystem around them. Innovation is not just within. It's actually, in fact, mostly from outside. And they allow multiple systems in parallel. Systems to take care of the core business, a system to bring up the new businesses. And those systems need to be in parallel. And they do that and manage that very, very skillfully. And then the final thing, people. For them, everyone should be an entrepreneur. I mean, we talk about entrepreneurship here. For me, that is, of course, they need to be they are expected to be entrepreneur, but even to become an entrepreneur. So in those cases, those companies allow them to maybe even start a business around their idea at the end. So they go from entrepreneur to entrepreneur. And the organizations allow them to experiment and also have a flexible career. There's a career of being an entrepreneur, and there's a career of doing a corporate career, and they allow both, which is also very different from a traditional company. And then finally, they share the value creation. So people, employees, spending hundreds of hours and loyalty to those companies, also getting paid by having equity. And if they start up something, they have equity of that company they start up. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. It's not just the top leadership or the owners taking everything.
That's what we call a sentiment of owner. So everyone has, in this case, real ownership, because they're being rewarded as owners, but about what they're doing. You mentioned the word intrapreneur, and I would like to ask Birgit if she could explain a little bit more about this concept of intrapreneurial capital. This is a concept you defined. I would like to understand, Birgit, what does it mean, entails, and if possible, if you could present some related concepts so we can understand this idea of entrepreneurial capital a little better.
Okay. Our studies show that to integrate new ideas into established companies, you have to have the entrepreneurs, that you have to have the employees who have a mindset that enables them to take part of what's happening outside the company, outside in the innovative world where new tech is developed and new behaviors are taking place. And this is the way to integrate new ideas in established companies is using their entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneur is more like a interpreter or a bridge between the ongoing business and the transformative things happening outside. What happens in startups, the entrepreneur is very tight in having relations with outside world because of its curiosity, his or her curiosity. And you can find in entrepreneurial capital, you can find the same type of characters as Annika mentions about the global leaders, because in a successful entrepreneurship, you have this need for decentralization. You have to be sustainable in this complex environment. You have to be able to do both the incremental innovation and to make some transformative process within the companies. Otherwise, they won't survive. So when we talk about entrepreneurial capital, we focus on 3 areas, and that is ambidextrous leadership, just as Annika talked about. Leaders that can lead with vision and strategies more than details. At the same time, they have to be able to lead the ongoing operations. So they need to be very flexible. And we have the thing that you have to foster a culture of openness and of trust and of collaboration. And in this is very much of encouraging networking with the internal and external parties, also encouraging partnerships. And this is in the whole organization, not only in the innovation part of the organization, but in the whole organization. And finally, you have to provide some support for these entrepreneurs who are driving this transformative process within the company. So you have to provide funding, budgets for entrepreneur for this kind of transformative projects. You have to allow them to use time to spend time on purely new things. And you have to have this leadership that encourage and really want to make use of the new findings within the ongoing business. And Albert will come back to how we present this, but these are the key factors or the key areas. And when I listen to Annika, it's very, very similar to what Annika found.
That's
even though
interesting.
yeah.
And especially if people are just focusing on running the business and all the money goes to running the business, there's no money to transform in the business, as you mentioned. You also mentioned an aspect that Annika has mentioned before as well. That's this culture for business transformation. And we have a question here from the audience. So Nicola is asking, did their success, in case the success of the companies that Annika had studied, came from their culture, or did their success allow them to drive the culture? So I think that's a very clever question.
I think it's mostly first. It's a mindset. It's about how you want your company to be organized. And if you look at a startup, then you have normally a very, very flat organization, very quick decisions. You make the decisions very quick. You can iterate very fast because you have to. And that when you grow from being a startup, a modern startup, you grow. You try to keep this way of working as far as you can, but it will come to a point where you have to be more able to also run what we call the ongoing business. You have to be able to be more structured and to secure quality, etc., etc. But our mission is to make the companies understand that they always have to have one part of them have to be oriented through to the transformative processes. You have to have a transformative portfolio, even if it's not large. So I think when you keep this culture, when you're growing from the beginning, then you can say you have it with you. But if you're in an established company today, you will have to transform your culture. And then they will find that it will be successful. And when then the success will drive further development, that I'm sure. A long answer.
I like to define corporate culture as a shared mindset. So I know that everyone has their own mindset, and the mindset of an individual is not replicable to other individual because it's very individualistic stuff. But if we have some shared common values, some shared behaviors, I would call that a culture, especially if it's in an organization. Do you want to add something to that, Annika?
I agree with you. I think it's important, though, to understand that part of culture is also the sort of technical system. You know, so Edgar Schein, that unfortunately is dead now, fantastic researcher. I mean, he was the father behind this, right? And he usually talked about, you know, the social part and the technical part. And the technical part is more or less, you know, how we design processes, how we design, you know, everything from processes to our office to if we believe in open office or closed, you know, small rooms or whatever. Everything is like part of our culture, even the colors we choose, you know, on our furnitures or whatever. Everything is like part of our belief. And I think what Birgitte said is so true. To answer the question that came in, it was a belief, original belief, an initial belief that drove them to develop this kind of companies. It didn't exist before. And I think this belief came from also belief in technologies. I mean, it's not a coincidence that this new mecca of this model is from Silicon Valley, because that's where information technology started. And they understood technology that much, so they understood that why should I then need to organize it like this? I can do this instead with the technology. And then I can get so much more out of my talents.
Perfect. So, Albert, I know that you have created this model, the 4C model for entrepreneurial capital. Could you present that idea for us a little bit and explain how does it work?
Of course, I would love to. I just want to add on to the discussion we were having just before. I must say that is the necessity of all three pillars to be really in there: the culture and the leadership, but also having organizational support, spending money on actually driving to be the best. As Dr. Steiber was saying in the beginning, it's as important that you have that mindset to really understand that it's gonna cost you sweat and it's gonna cost money to build that organizational support, because you need to be able to run both fast and slow at the same time. So yeah, just wanted to add that into the discussion. Yeah. But when we started to look at this challenge, Fabrizio, back to the model, we started to look into the nature, and in nature, there are two different systems working. And one system is the stable system, where everything is stable. A good example of that might be how the moon is traveling around Earth. It's not going to change tomorrow, I hope, because then we're all dead. And that is a very stable system. Making a snowflake is a very spontaneous and changing system. These both systems do exist, and they work together in nature. And that is what we brought up on the x-axis. And when we were looking at this, we also saw that there is, on the x-axis, is also bias for humans. Some people see the building company and how everything building that company, everything is stable. Especially if you've been running a company that's been around for 150 years, which a lot of companies has been in Sweden. They are in a very, very stable system. And then we have the companies that we've been talking about. They are operating in the changing system, and they are driving all this new AI. They are driving the technology, and everything is gonna happen tomorrow. And they live in a reality where you do not even have a clue what's gonna be what the technology is gonna be able to do 3 or 4 months from now, right? So when we started to understand this, we started to see that a lot of the people in top management were in these incumbent large companies in Sweden, at least, they were very much recruited on the left side of this model. So the whole company was built on the very left side of this company. And we wanted to understand also how people inside of this company could influence the change in the company. So that's the other dimension. That's the y-axis that we have. So a person, if you have low influence or no influence, you cannot change the outcome of that organization, what cars that car manufacturer is going to make, or what kind of bread that bakery is going to bake, right? But if you have a high influence, you're the one doing the calls. So on the left side, we saw that up in the left corner, we saw that that's where top management are. And they're operating within a work approach where they love to write the map and see that everybody follows the map. And if you go straight down from there into what we call the clarified context, you follow the path. You're the executors. You're the one who's going to make everything work. And that's usually like 98% of everything happening inside of a company. It happens within those two different contexts. So it goes something breaking down in the ongoing business. You escalate it up to the people in the top management. They decide what they're going to do, and then you implement it, and you're back there doing a GDP surplus of 2 or 5% or something like that. So companies are really used to that. But we saw that when you build something totally new, totally different, you do it in another way. It's another process. So that process starts out in the chaotic, in the changing system where you cannot influence where things going to be tomorrow. And let's say there is somebody from the company coming to a meetup or listening to a very interesting talk on LinkedIn with Fabrizio, right? And saying, oh my God, that is really interesting, that what I hear from that. What if we do something together? So somebody from the company goes outside, see that, what if we could bring this inside? We could do something and try to make that. Birgitte was actually talking about being the interpreter, but it's also being the date service, being the person taking something into the company. And then when you take it inside of the company, you can actually start influencing it. You can start saying, oh my God, this new technology, if we use it in this way, we can actually have so much fun with it. We can make so many wise and new decisions using this AI as an example. We call that stage the cocooning. In cocooning, the intrapreneur together with the outsider entrepreneur, they're working together, and they are, as we call it, they are in satellite mode and also drilling down. So they are out there and really looking at the problem, trying to see what's happening, but they're also into the details, like where could we actually make this work? And when they have something, when they have something that is mature enough, they could present that into the companies, to the top management. And then it comes to what we call optimization. And when it goes to optimization, you shouldn't focus on changing the project coming from cocooning. You should rather start looking at the organization and see what new organization do we need to actually support this? What new map do we need? And how can we see that people follow that? And then you implement it and integrate it into the business, and it comes to the ongoing, and it starts making money. So we were looking at this. We're talking about 4 different stages. with 4 different contexts, 4 different talents in each, 4 different work approaches. But how hard can it be? Why are 98% of the projects failing when they do this? They're the only companies that are able to do this is the ones Dr. Steiber has been looking at. And they are based in another view. Why is this so hard, and when do they break? When we started to look at that, it was when actually a project was moving from one context to another. And that's the arrows. So the first arrow in the model, we call it the discover. That's when the entrepreneur says to the intrapreneur, oh my God, this is going to make so much money for you. It's going to make $100 million US. This is wonderful in just 1 or 2 years from now. Could I have 20 now? The entrepreneur goes and says, it's just a little small problem. I don't have a budget for that. How come you don't have a budget? This is so important. You know how much money you make, your shareholders and all that. Yeah, but the CFO in the company is very far to the left in the model. So he or she will not spend money on the right side of the model. And that is what we talk about, the organizational support, right? So then we come, but usually they go to the same kind of parties. They have the same bias. They're purpose-driven. They work for air and hope. So the biggest problem, the only horizontal movement in this model, it's when something has been in cocooning and it's going to go over to the stable side. So it's something that's been working in the changing, purpose-driven, the field of dreams side, and it comes into where all the power is, and internal politics, and the hard culture of doing the implementations. We call that the reveal. The reveal, that's when you have 10 minutes prepared to go into one of those management meetings. You put up with a dress and a tie, black tie even, and you come in there, and the chairman says, "Oh, welcome. I'm very sorry to say, though, but we're running a little bit late on time. So your 10 minutes, could you cut it down to 5 and take away that PowerPoint with all the happy people showing how fancy the end result's going to be? Focus on the numbers. And could you present the evidence-based numbers first?" And then you go like, evidence-based has never been done before. So how can we do something that is evidence-based? So that is the hardest part of these conflicts. I should stop there, not to bore you more, but it makes a really good. Why we made the model is that it really helps to get a language around this really complex way of looking at making this work. So yeah, that was a very short. That's 1.5 hours in 5 minutes. Sorry.
Well, it was not boring at all. It was very interesting. I wonder if Dr. Annika could give her perspective on this. I see a very a big connection between this model and the Kneffing model about that deals with complexity. It's just myriad, but it also brings this concept about influence that was not so clear. Annika, how do you see this movement that Albert mentioned in the organizations you studied, on how the investment comes from an initiative of change?
Absolutely, and I think the illustration or the model is a great illustration of those two logics, those two systems, those two processes, whatever we call it. And as you said, 95% of the companies are in the stable system. They want the stable system. It's a security for them. They might even keep their position as CEOs by keeping stability. They don't want to upset the board of directors. That also is part of the problem. That want money on Friday and stability. So I think what is differentiating those leading companies, taking a lead, truly becoming the highest value companies in the world, are that they are living according to, I mean, they, as Brigitte said, they had a belief already from start that they had to be flexible and, you know, create value over and over and over again. But when they grow up and become adults, they kept that mindset through the founders, for example, or the founder moved over to the board. But what's interesting now is that I think more organizations all around the world, in Europe, Asia, North America, South America, start to understand that, and maybe AI have triggered this even more, that there's not a chance in the world to stay competitive if you stay only having one system, only one stable system. You will be dead, I would say, within 10 years. So I think, you know, most companies today wake up, and they wake up pretty quickly now.
And that changed a little bit the perspective, because you started saying about those companies, they desired not to be followers, they desired to be leaders. And now you're saying independently where you want to be. If you want to survive, you need to be ready to change. It's not a question about being the leader, it's a question of survival.
Yes. And just to give an example, I mean, this is maybe a small example, but just think about it. If you have giant companies worth 3 trillions, and then you have the top leader, say, in your industry in a nation that is worth 13 billions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how easy wouldn't it be to just acquire it and kill it, or acquire it and just take the IP if you want to go into that industry? I mean, to not keep that market valuation up of the company is also becoming a survival factor, because you are always, you know, you can always be conquered. You can always be killed. You are weaker, right? This is another war. Before it was the Vikings and it was the sword and it was the horses, but now it's market valuation of the company. And if you're not able to grow and grow and grow with profitability, it's hard to keep that market valuation up. And if you don't, it's very easy to buy you, acquire you, and if you want, you're killed. Or I mean, the new owner see it as a threat or whatever, right? Many companies are bought to be killed because they are becoming a potential threat.
Well, be ready to transform yourself every day.
Yes,
I believe that's a mantra. And
Yeah,
I have a question
could
here.
I fill in? Could I fill into that, because I think that this is really, really interesting. Everybody sees AI is happening right now, right? So what the board is doing right now, they're actually saying, okay, should we do a feasibility study? And they put half a year on that. And they say, oh, we need really to do this. Where should we govern this? That's another feasibility study. And then you're 1 year later. And then you have, okay, we should build a place where we could do the cocooning or do the things that Annika is talking about here. Who should we recruit for that? That's going to take another year. And then all of a sudden, before you even start, 3 years is gone. And you get these really top people in there. And they say, well, you're so much behind. Why should I be in this company? And then you're out of it. And this is the kind of what's really happening right in the large company. When a company like Volvo Cars goes up to be head to head saying that we're gonna become a software company, they start fighting for talents at the same kind of level as Google, Apple, Microsoft, all these large companies. So exactly as you said, Dr. Steiber, I mean, this is, you need to prepare, you need to start earlier, and you need to learn how to crawl and walk before you start running, right? That's why they shouldn't sit on their hands. They should be starting this, even though they don't even know what the end result's going to be for that group. But they need to have that muscle. Entrepreneurial capital means that you build a muscle inside of the company that is going to help you to rejuvenate so that you stay relevant for for the next generation up to come.
I'm understanding that entrepreneurial capital is not something that you create when you have an initiative of change. It's
Exactly.
It's something that you have to change to support your initiatives for changing. You must be prepared for changing with this kind of capital. I want to include Roland into the conversation. Roland, I would ask you if you could bring us some practical examples of how does this model works in practice. Could you tell us some real stories from practical study cases?
Yeah, sure. So, really, there are really a litany of inspiring stories, but there are two that really stuck out when we were doing our research for the book. And I would say that they're Amazon and Google. And really implicit in the quest for competitive advantage, the organization has to have a way of exploring. I think that everyone is about that in a certain to a certain degree, but you need to have structures in place to handle it. And so I would say Amazon really did a pretty bang up job at doing just that. To give you a little bit of context, we're talking about I believe Amazon started in, let's say, 1994. Is that when Sweden was in third place for the World Cup? And so 1994, but so about 9 or 10 years later, they basically had sort of, I wouldn't say pivoted, but internally you could say they went from being basically selling books to, okay, we can sell some other stuff as well. So their product had, their offering had expanded quite a bit. So imagine now it's 2003, 4, somewhere in there, and they start to really work with their digital employee suggestion box. They'd had it for a while, I believe, but basically they encourage the employees to send in their ideas. And pretty simple. It's also very engaging. So, I mean, if you're into employer branding and this kind of thing, this is also a fantastic case. If you're a business leader out there, a CIO, a product owner, this story is for you. So this was really a great repository to capture all of those creative and wonderful ideas. But they also offered structure. They also offered a template. And they called it a future press release. So you could quickly describe the value proposition and basically illustrate the desired customer experience, which is pretty brilliant. So all of the naysayers could scoff quietly at their desk, you can think of a design sprint here, that this really, really worked. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just for someone who's a creative director like me or whatever. This is also for the product developers and the architects to get involved. So they could roll up their sleeves and describe how and why the finished product came about. And that method, they called it working backwards. So it's basically a step-by-step way of, reverse engineering, if you will. And here they got quite technical, which I think is brilliant. So otherwise it can be, oftentimes when you're doing design sprints and whatnot, it can be a little fluffy, which for some people is fine. As Albert was talking about, the people on the right side of the equation there, the changing system, they're like, wow, this is great. But if you are, and this is a gradient, a scale, if you are on the left side of the equation, then you're concerned about the budgets and the money and how it works and whatnot, which is equally as important. So this is where diversity in thought, I think some of what Amy Edmondson and the rest of the gang are doing there, Brene Brown, I would mention, Adam Grant, and there are many others, to open up our teams and to be a little bit more vulnerable and to maybe meet in the middle. So these tools, this framework, if you will, really got folks to the table and they could talk about it. How do we solve this? What does this mean? And then it happened. So an entrepreneur named Charlie Ward came up with a way to integrate, exclusive shipping into an annual membership. That was his idea. So the company gets behind it. They develop a product roadmap and they called it Amazon Prime. There's the story. But if you're a business leader, if you're a CIO or a CEO, then you'd probably want to hear this, that today Amazon Prime has 230 million subscribers. And it brings in about 40 billion with a B dollars in annual revenue. So that means that about 14% of Amazon's total revenues are a direct result of entrepreneurship. And I think that is really the main message here, that, nobody perhaps is thinking that way. Even if you're a smaller company out there, you could be this. I mean, we talked with a lot of Swedish business owners, and here in the Nordics, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be Amazon or Google. I mean, you could be the very proud owner of a bank or whatever else. Imagine if 14% of your total annual revenues were a direct result of your entrepreneurship. There's a question for you. So Google also did something very similar in the early days, and it offered employees the chance to use up to about 20% of their work week to experiment. So they call this the 20% project. So while you're on the clock, you're getting paid, 20% of your time can go to something else, a project, an idea, a product, perhaps. So here we go again. An entrepreneur named Paul Buchheit developed an idea for Gmail as his 20% project, and the company launched it as a product in 2004. So today, the company has 36% of the total email management market. That's 1.8 billion with a B email accounts. And I think I read somewhere 120 billion messages each day. So just like Amazon, Alphabet, the company that came up with Google, could attribute its success to the entrepreneurial capital that it invested years earlier. That market share should be more like dividends, if you ask me. So that's those two stories, I think, is something to really chew on. Yeah.
Very good. I have a question here that I believe you already answered part of it at last. What outcomes or methods can be used to socialize this innovative transformation required to survive? And you mentioned about methods that Google and Amazon have used to bring the transformation. I have seen a lot of organizations trying to copy those methods, but losing the focus on the important thing that you guys are calling what I believe a mindset. So it's not about just having the method for transformation. You need the right mindset, and you need, as Albert said very importantly, you have to foster that mindset and put some resources for transformation. It's not just about creating a method and using it on the left side of that model just to do the same kind of work. You're using the methods for innovation just to do the day-by-day job. You have to invest effort, invest money, invest resources on transforming this organization.
Oh yeah.
Did I got it right, Roland?
Absolutely right. Spot on.
All right, thank you very much.
I think it's really interesting because when we start working with companies, especially we go to top management, and when we presented the model, if they do buy in on it, we go to the next level, so to speak, and we actually discussed the three different pillars. We ask them, what kind of organizational support do you think would foster entrepreneurial capital in your company? And these people, they've gone through school. They are really intelligent. They're really savvy. So if you just sit down with them and discuss, what kind of organizational support do you think that you need for this group? What kind of culture do you need to foster inside of the company? And once again, what kind of leadership? How should we lead this group? Do they need to have one of those clocks? You need to come in 8:15 on Monday, and you could leave 4:45. Well, it could be discussed. When you start working with them and they start seeing that these are people that are very creative, they are purpose-driven, we lead them like this, we give this a culture, and we support them like this. When they do understand that, then we come to the question, which is the key question: what do you dream of? What is your vision? If we talk to Volvo, are you talking about cars? Are you talking about drones? What are you actually to become? Exactly as Dr. Steiber was saying here in the beginning. If you go to one of those Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, they wouldn't dare lose their first position. They're going to be there and they're going to strive for that. And they have a mindset for all the leaders that that's where you need to be. We try to do the same with the companies that we work with and ask them, what kind of vision, what do you dream of? And if you get Volvo to dream about drones and to put that into this kind of cocooning stage, that's when you really see things happening. That's when magic is being done. If you call that a method, Mitra, or if you see that as but that is what because you need that tap in from top management, because that's where the real resources are, and that's where the vision needs to be established for a long-sighted and hard walk or run of marathon as it's going to be.
I will try to bring this idea of leadership or organizations talking about innovation. I see that sometimes there is a lack of vocabulary to talk about innovation, a lack of standards. And I would ask Annika, I know that you have worked in a global innovation standard with the ISO organization. Could you explain or tell us a little bit how is this standard structured and how can organizations use that to transform themselves?
Absolutely, and I've been reflecting while I've been listening here, and it's a number of very interesting things going on. I mean, we talked before about that. It seems that many traditional companies now, we heard Volvo here, Volvo Cars a number of times, but they are not alone. There are many that start to understand that they need to do something differently, and they need to act and manage the firm differently. And I just want to, before I go into the standard, say that one reason for that is that the tech companies that did adopt and adapt to digital technologies and use that together with changes of their organization and way of leading and that kind of thing, started to go and enter into traditional industries, right? And it's interesting because when I talk with those traditional companies, it's two things that stands out. One is that the other ones are so bloody fast. It's the speed, right? Before it was 14 years, now it's down to 4. I mean, so there is a huge difference in thinking about time and the value of time, and that you need to be fast. The other thing is the level of innovation. I mean, they don't go in and they offer the same things like a normal car. No, of course not. I mean, they come out with the autonomous car or something totally novel, new. So it's kind of level of innovation, and I think to stay competitive in those what we call traditional industries like automotive, banking, whatever. If you start getting competitors coming from this kind of alien mindset, right? They could have come from another planet and they just are better, right? They're just much better and they will learn the industrial competences quickly, or they just hire the people they need. You have a problem. You have a problem, true problem, because you don't understand that mindset or the way working like the aliens are doing it. So, sorry. Yeah, please continue before I go into standard.
No, I just love that, and I want to kind of go back to context. I think you really are touching on something there, and part of this I think might be just having a different way of seeing the picture. Yeah. And so when I started out my career, I was at Coca-Cola or whatever, and we had a marketing guru named Sergio Zeman, who was kind of a big deal for me. And, he was kind of like you say, a marketing, a digital prophet, if you will, kind of, told us how things, and he described things. He described a 360-degree marketing landscape, he called it. He talked to us about that. And that was brilliant, I think, because it really it saved us a whole lot of time. And he just made it very plain and said, this is basically what we're talking about here. Now, if you take that same model, and I think he would agree, and we come into today, right now we've got AI. That 360-degree customer landscape is like plate tectonics, right? AI is like plate tectonics for that landscape. Yes. And the customer segments are moving at light speed. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
That's context. So we have to we have to challenge our thinking. We have to challenge our image, our understanding of what is reality right now. And so that's really about,
Yeah, so in the world of innovation, I mean, sometimes we talk about those as myths, right? We have a lot of assumptions and myths on how we compete in this industry and how the world look like and how you do business and whatever. And we need to start questioning all those. But to just touch on the standard to answer your question, Fabrizio. So in order for a company to change, you need a number of things. You need desire to change, right? Number one. If you don't have any desire to change, you will not change. Two, you need a map. And that map, here you need some principles, maybe methods, tools that we heard about. I mean, and we can learn from all those companies that we talked about, a number of tools, right? But we also need those overlying sort of principles. What kind of organization do we need in order to be scalable, to be innovative? I mean, we know so much about that. So we need a map. And then, of course, we need management to navigate the change. So how can then the standard help out here? So the standard, it will be published on September 8th, 2024. A standard on innovation management will be published, which is revolutionary and never existed anything like that before. So it collects the best practice from over 50 countries represented by experts in the field of innovation management that have been putting together this kind of blueprint. And there are the principles, and there are also some suggestion tools. But the most important thing is that it provides you with that system. It provides you of advice. How do you build up that system in order to be able to create growth over and over and over again? So why is that needed? Why do we need a standard for doing that? In my world, it's a matter of democracy. I mean, before, the companies that learn how to really truly be efficient and effective, they either had a very influential board of directors that had learned this from someone else. Maybe they came from Google, they sit in another board and they bring all this competence to the new company, and they are so influential so they get this new company to change. Another way is that, some top leaders like Amazon is buying a company and is teaching the acquired companies the new way of working, right? So it's this kind of father-son or mother-daughter. But there can be a third way, and that is that you actually provide a standard that will maybe becoming a requirement. You might not even be able to compete to sell certain services, say to governmental organization, if you cannot prove that you actually have a system for innovation and growth and value creation. And it sort of makes sense. Why would you focus on and be certified on quality, but not on growth and innovation? So it might be a requirement, and that could then be the desire. So I'm talking about going back to the point of you have to create desire, and then you need the map. So the standard tried to sort of help out with both. forcing a desire to come, which is usually coming from a demand or requirement from outside or from the board or from competitors, something like that. And then sort of the map that can help you start this work and even, assess your work, how good you are. So I think it's pretty cool. And I would say that in 2014, Google was very influential here because I feeded in a lot of Google knowledge from my first book into the standardization work, to the innovation standard in 2014, 2015. But in 2022, 2023, I actually have been using a lot of knowledge from the Chinese company Hire that is extremely innovative in its way of working. So regarding, way of working in ecosystems and how to a number of tools and new financial instrument and how to use AI in ecosystem, all that kind of thing is totally new, also in the innovation world. So we'll be feeding that in. So I would say both Google and Hire have been very influential in this work.
We are in the top of the hour here. I don't want to wait too much more, but I would like to make a closing of this session with key takeaways. My key takeaway is that independent of what change my organizations want to build, we should start by wanting to change and creating the capacity to change the system, as Dr. Annika said at the end, or the capital for changing, creating entrepreneurial capital. And that's a must to survive. It's not a point of being the number one in the world, it's just about survival. I would like to pick each one of you to make your final comment. And if you want to change something that's going to happen in the next few days or invite people to watch something, please use this time because we're ending at this point. Could you start, Albert?
Yeah, my only hope is that we get entrepreneurial capital into the annual report really, really soon, because then we can understand these capacities and have the transparency from a company point of view. So we understand how well these mechanisms are actually working on the inside. It needs to be done. Otherwise, there are alibis and hiding, and they shouldn't be working with that. They should be working with transparency and showing how big muscles they have in entrepreneurial capital. Thank you. That's everything for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Birgit?
Yeah, I think that if all companies use their employees' knowledge within the employees, and if they encourage a common language around innovation, I think they will find much shorter ways, they will be able to work both short-term and long-term at the same time, and they will really get some knowledge which they don't know that it's already there in their companies.
Perfect. Roland?
Yeah, I would say there are really three things. The organization has to kind of put its ear to the ground and listen. I like to say there's power in networking. With this context that I was talking about earlier, that the context can help business leaders to make sense of what's going on, to understand why it's necessary to invest in transformative development. And then to be like, maybe it's a little fun here, but to be like Jude Bellingham of Real Madrid, to maintain offense and defense better than anybody else. So transformative development and the ongoing business, yes, you got to do both. You got to play with a win or learn mentality. You don't win or lose, you win or learn. And then the third thing is really to set up, I would say, systems or frameworks to process the work towards key results. And I used the examples of, Amazon and Google earlier. I just heard actually the other day, and I highly recommend it, Claire Hughes Johnson, formerly of Stripe, she says, a good system creates velocity. And I really like that. So I'd leave you with that. Make that the default. Create a system and, gas, then you mash the gas pedal. Go ahead. Gasa på, as the Swedes say. It creates velocity. That's it.
Okay. Annika?
Yeah, I will say that three things. Again, I love three things. First is that only having a stable system in your organization is like a physical system with, that is going to, it's very close and will self-die, right? So that is the law of physics. It's going to die. So just understand that and try to learn from the true innovators in the world, why they are so successful, why they are so valuable as a companies on the market. It's not the technology per se. It's not a coincidence that Google started talking about AI in 2016. Come on. So just wake up. There's something else, and understand that that is part of this new management model. And then the top leadership and the board of directors need to step up. They need to understand that they are the counterforce. Nobody wants to change. I mean, if you're not having this kind of culture and mindset that you have to change all the time, most don't change. So the top management and the boards, they need to be the counterforce and actually force a change. And that is the only way to get the change, because they are powerful enough. And if they don't step up and do that, it will not happen fast enough. And then finally, you need to think about that this is an infinite journey. The transformation is not one time. You will have to, from now on, if you haven't got that yet, be transforming your business maybe every 5th year. So just wake up and smell the coffee, that this is a skill you need to build up, right? So you need to be good and very good at it.
It's not about making a transformation, it's being nimble, able to transform yourself over and over again. Folks, thank you very much for joining me today. It was a great pleasure, and I believe we had a very nice conversation. This conversation is going to be available on YouTube, on my channel YouTube, The Brazilian BA, also available on LinkedIn for those who want to watch it. And I'm going to end the transmission right now, but please stay a little bit so we can wrap up between us. For those who joined us, thank you for joining. It was a pleasure to have you here. See you again in another episode. Bye-bye.